Good. So, so once you open the Access 2010, right, you have a blank database. And then for the file name, you can choose any file name you want. But since this is like a relationship between the student, this is for the relationship between the student and professor, I'm going to say student, then professor, URF. Okay. And this icon here, right, it's really like tells you where you can save this database. By the way, this is not a table name. This is name of your database. And just like I said, database can have multiple tables. And then when you open this, where for me is I'm going to save this database into 309 Access. I already a student professor, so I just rename this. Let's say say for me, student, then professor, because I already have a same database. So student, professor, and then I'll say OK. And then I'm going to click the create. Okay, right? And then it's time for me to create a table, right? So first, if you want to create a table, you use this view icon here. Go to view. So this is right now in the data sheet view mode. But when you first create your database, when you first create a table, my recommendation is use design view. And then you have to choose a table name. So I'll say student. The table name, the student. And then click OK. So now I can type my field name and data type and extract. By the way, this is something we already did. This is a review. And then field name, I'll say student ID. With student num, you just choose your own name. For me, is I just put student ID. And for the data type, I'm going to say text. By the way, for this class, you're going to pretty much use two data types. Either text or number, pretty much. So I'm going to use a text. And the next one is a name. I'll say if you just type just name, then they're going to complain. So I'll say student name. You can choose any name. This is a variable name. So for me, is I say student name. And then data type is also text. The next one is department code. So I'll say just, this is example. So I'll say just department, DEPP. And department is, the data type is text, right? It's not a number. It's not a date. The last one is, I'll say professor ID. Professor ID, and then this is going to be text. Right? But if you look at this, somehow, by default, the first column, right, is chosen for the primary key. But, I mean, this is an example. Let's say if you want to choose professor ID as your primary key, what you can do is go to this row and right-click. If you do right-click, then there's an option you can choose. If I just choose primary key, then the professor ID becomes my primary key, which is not correct. This is just an example. So now, of course, in this table, this is a student table, so student ID must be your primary key. So just go back, choose this record, and then right-click, and then the primary key. So now your primary key is changed from professor ID to student ID. And this is what I want. So we just create and the data type. for the table called student. Now, go to view, and then now go to the data sheet view. Then you first save the table. Yes, I'm going to, of course, I have to save it, so I click yes. I'm going to save this. Now, as you can see, when you go to the database view, data sheet view, you have this. So we're going to just make up anything. So I'll just say, for the simplicity, I'll just say 100. I know that it's your ID is much more complex than just 3 digits, but this is just an example. So 100 is my student ID, and let's say this is L. And the Part1 code is CIS. And L's advisor ID is, for the professor ID, let's say we'll choose 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so let's say 10. Oh, yes. Okay. And then for the student ID, the next student is 200, right? And the student name is what? Let's say Jim. And he's also in the CIS. And then he happened to have a same advisor. So 10. He happened to have the same advisor. So L and Jim, they happen to have the same advisor. And the next 300, this guy is a Kate. And department is accounting, ACCT. And then advisor, professor ID, num is, let's say 20. And then for the student ID, 400, happen to have the same name, Kate. Because fortunately, student name is what? It's not a primary key, so it's okay to have the same name. And then she major in CCIS, and then happen like her advisor ID is, let's say 30. And then next student is 500, and student name is Ian. Then major is English. Let's say ENG. Or that could be engineering, so, so let's say English. And he has an advisor, and his ID is 40. Okay. Any question? Okay, let me